Okay, so having discussed what SOA is, service-oriented architecture, how it differs from conventional approaches, how it allows us to access multiple sources of information across the network, let people specialize, all that good stuff that we discussed in the first video. Watch the first video first, the SOA video. I'm going to make some comments on Unit 8 assignment. I had quite a time figuring out the Unit 8 assignment, and I'm hoping that this will be easier for you with these comments. So I hope these comments are helpful to you. So if you read the assignment as it's given, you must have a user interface, some kind of a GUI, and that may or may not be a web page. It could be a Java Swing or Java FX program. It could be C#. Doesn't really matter. You prompt the user for an address string, and then that address string is sent to the Google Geocoder API, and that resolves that street address to a latitude and longitude. It's really quite sophisticated. Does a lot of work for you that you wouldn't want to do yourself. Comes back with the latitude and longitude. Then we take the latitude and the longitude and we send that to Google Maps, and that returns a map centered on the latitude and the longitude provided. And then we add a marker to the point on the map specified by the latitude and longitude, and then we display the map. And so we end up with the map with a map marker on it and a way to put addresses in. Here's an example that's a perfectly acceptable result. It's what I came up with. You don't have to have yours look particularly like this. This is a little floating, call this a floating panel, because as the maps change behind it, it stays on top. So it's called a floating panel. But you don't have to use a floating panel. It has a field where I can put in a street address, a text field, and then it has a submit button, right? Text field submit button. I happen to put in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and hit it. And it's centering that on Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's something that Geocoder does for you, is if the address is not so specific, it makes a reasonable choice, comes up with a reasonable latitude and longitude. I've also tried it with a specific street address, like where my house is, and when you zoom in, it gets it down to exactly where it should be. You'll notice in the middle of this map, I have a marker. This is a default marker. Google lets you do all sorts of clever things with markers. You're welcome to do that. You don't need to do that. But we put a little marker wherever the latitude and longitude is, and this is a perfectly acceptable result. This is a full credit kind of a result. Okay? And you're welcome to just do what I showed you, and that'd be great. You can also alter the appearance. You can have your GUI off to one side and a panel for the map on one side of it, something like that. Your GUI doesn't have to float on top of your map. But I found out that it's actually very general. I found out that the assignment does not need to use Google Maps or even any kind of map at all. You can use any publicly available web service. What your assignment does have to do is you need to have a GUI. You need to prompt the user for some kind of a selection. You need to use that user input to request information from a web service. And then you need to use that information to make a second request to get some other information, and then you need to display that result. If you think about the basic assignment I just showed you, we get an address from the user. That's the user input. We use that address to get a latitude and longitude from Geocoder, and then we use that latitude and longitude to get a map from the map service. So we use two different services. They're related, but they're different. But you can use any. So for example, you could ask Geocoder, you could give it a street address and get a latitude and longitude, and then give that latitude and longitude to, say, a weather service, and ask for what the weather for today at that location is going to be, something like that. Or you could prompt the user to take the street address and also tell it which day it wanted, and you could get weather information for, say, next week or something. It's pretty flexible. If you find a library set up, you could prompt the user for a book title or an author, and then you could use that to get a Dewey Decimal Number, and then you could use that Dewey Decimal Number to look up a abstract of the book, something like that. It's really quite flexible as long as you prompt the user and you use it to get information from a web service, and you use that information to get information from a second web service, you display some result. So we can see that you've done that. That's fine. You can use whatever you want. I keep reading there are thousands upon thousands of publicly available web services. So it's up to you. Now, the default project uses Google Maps, and there's some good reasons for that. Okay, Google Maps, and I'm using Google Maps in a broad sense. They have a lot of related APIs, such as geocode that looks up street addresses and latitude and longitude. There are some good reasons for using it. It's very sophisticated. It's very easy to use. There are some issues, and I'll just put you onto those because I spent a lot of time banging my head on the wall. I don't want to put you through that. So the Google APIs, they require what's called a key. The key is just this long specific string, and when you make a request, you include that string in your request. It's not hard to do. It's just a string. You just concatenate it into the middle of your request in the right place. And it's very obvious from the examples where. And it looks up and sees that you are you. Okay? So you need a key. No key doesn't work. To get a key, you have to have a Google Cloud billing account. Now, even a few months ago, even last session, you could get a key for free from Google. They just had a thing where you put a little information about yourself, an email or something, and you asked for a key and it gave you a key. No more. No more. Now you have to have a billing account, and then your billing account will say, do you want a key? And you can get multiple keys. You can change your key. You can say, you know, someone else has hacked my key. I don't want that key going against my billing account. You can delete it. You can get new ones, but you have to have a Google Cloud billing account. And to get a Google Cloud billing account, you have to give them a credit card. Okay. Now, when you create your account, it comes with a $200 a month use credit. So you're very unlikely to actually pay for using an API. Yeah, if you started running a business on, you had thousands of people using it every day, you'd get charged something. But to do this assignment, if it's you poking at the assignment, and even maybe I test your assignment and I run it 2 or 3 times, you're not going to come up anywhere near each of these usages, and it depends on which API and what you do with it. But you're talking a couple of pennies per use. So, you know, you're hitting, you know, hundreds of usages before you actually show up on your card. Nevertheless, I understand it didn't make me happy that I had to get my credit card out and put it in to make this thing work. And I went back and forth with this with the lead instructor, and we didn't get anywhere. He said, well, you didn't used to. I said, I know you didn't used to. He goes, but you do now, look. And he's like, well, okay, you do. Maybe they can do something else. And we went through this whole thing, and where it ended up is he said, well, I'll think about it. Well, he's still thinking, and we have a session to finish. So the reality on the ground at the moment is if you're going to use Google Maps, you need to get the credit card out. You need to set an account up. You probably won't be billed for it, but of course you could, and it could get hacked. It's not really likely, but someone could come up with your key string and run their business off of it. And that's how life is. If you keep an eye on it, Google's pretty reasonable people. I'm sure if you canceled your key and called them up and said, I canceled my key, be sure that no one uses it, I'm sure that would happen. Now, it appears that they only verify your key if you access the Google API using JavaScript. It looked to me, I also played with this with Java. I wasn't real happy with how that went, but I did get results back. I did get a street address out and a latitude and longitude back, and it looked to me like it didn't really check the key on that. So you might be able to find just a key from a Google example or something where they said this is what key looks like, and you might get away with that for something other than JavaScript. Don't know. I know for JavaScript they check because they tag me on that, you get an error back that says, you know, this is not a good account. So your mileage may vary on whether you get away with that or not. I think they're in the process of establishing the key checking across all of their channels. They started with JavaScript because that's by far the most used. Okay. So while it's a hassle to get a key and worry about your credit card, once you break down and do this, it works really well. The Google Map API documentation is excellent. It includes detailed videos. It includes great examples. However, the documentation is focused on JavaScript embedded in a web page. That's what most people use. Google's basically a web company. That's what they care about. I'm sure if you look around, you can find tutorials to access it other ways. And you certainly can access it from Java and C# and any other language that can gen up a connection, a network connection. You can do it. Okay, now you may say, but I've not used JavaScript. I'm not happy with it. You know, I don't like the idea. But if you're willing to get a key and use JavaScript, have a look at this URL, because they basically do the project for you, just to be really honest about it. You know, there are a couple little tweaks you have to make, but it's really quite easy. And I'm planning on doing another video and discussing their solution to put you a little more at ease about that. But that is an option. Okay. Now on the course website, the Unit 8 video is focused on a site called the Weather Underground website. It's a weather site. You can look up the weather in your area next week, things like that. This used to be free. It is no longer free. It used to be that you just asked for a key and they gave you one. I think maybe you gave them your email address or something like that, but it wasn't a big deal. But now, to get a key, you have to set up a personal weather station. They'll sell you the equipment for a personal weather station, but you have to set up a personal weather station and give them data. Huh. That seems like a lot to me to do an assignment for the course. If you want to do that, it's fine. If you send me a project that uses Weather Underground, great. No problem. Another possibility that I didn't spend a lot of time looking into, I've just been busy enough with the rest of this without going into other things. Microsoft has a competitor for Google Maps called Bing Maps. You need a key. I think you can get a key for if you have an Azure account, and as part of your Purdue Global course, you get a Microsoft Azure account. There's a little setup to that. And it really didn't do what I wanted to. And when I asked for support help, they gave me a form that made no sense. It's a form that wanted to know all sorts of account information that I clearly didn't have. It was clearly not intended for an end user. And I just didn't feel that was helpful. I felt I was busy doing other things. So I stopped fooling with it. But I did get an Azure account that was somewhat useful. For instance, my copy of Visual Studio, I put in my Azure account and password, and it works. It doesn't tell me after 90 days that my free time is up and I should get an account or any of that stuff. It gives me an account. Now, unfortunately, right as I was checking into this, I got bollocksed up in a dual authentication thing with Microsoft, and they thought I had given them a cell phone number, which I had not given them, and it was all screwed up. And I just said, you know, I have a life, and I got onto it. You might be able to use Google Maps for free, and you could certainly do a similar, non-Google Maps, Bing Maps, and you could certainly do this project with Bing Maps. There are other people who have maps. You can do it with other maps. You can do it with other kinds of websites. I'm very flexible. Okay, so other. Look around if you want. Find some other publicly available web service. I'm very flexible. Just remember, you need some kind of a GUI. You need some kind of way to get input from the user. Don't hard code it. Send the input to some public service. Get some results back. Pull something out of the results. Send that to another service. Display the information from the other service. If you do that, you can use any web service you want. It could be restaurant listings. It could be recipes, it could be book catalogs, it can be maps, it can be weather, I don't care. Okay? Definitely, it can be very easy and powerful to use Google Maps. It's a lot of fun when it works. Just understand that you're going to have that key, and to have that key, you're going to have a billing account, and to have that billing account, you're going to have a credit card. And I spun my wheels for about a week going, there's got to be some way to do this without giving them my credit card number. I didn't find it. If you can find it, more power to you. Let me know. I'll send it to the rest of the class. Okay, so that's been my experience with the project. I did finally get it to work, and I'm going to put up one more little video that's going to walk through the code I used to generate the example I showed you a couple of slides ago. Hopefully that'll be helpful as well.